So in the previous video we saw we can define a function and we can supply input argument to it. And in this video we are going to see that we can actually send more than one arguments to the function. These arguments are just variables. These are just variables. Whatever value we will supply to these dynamically, because Python is dynamically typed, dynamically their type will be defined. And for example, here we have supplied just two variables and we just printed them. But based on supplying more than one input arguments and based on what logic we are going to perform, we can do anything. We can do anything. Yes, Python allows us to supply multiple input arguments to a function, and we can just perform all the tasks according to whatever logic we are going to do with that. So let's go to our friend Jupyter Notebook and see an example of a function with multiple input arguments. Let's say the function we define a function, let's say my power, let's say my power, let's say. You remember there is a POW function in Python. That's a built-in function. I'm going to write my own function. Let's say it contains A and B. Well, document string, this function computes power just like built-in power function. Great, that's the document string. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to print. Okay, let's create another variable C, that is A power B. Okay, then we print this C and we are done. Let's say that's our goal. So we register that function by just calling by just pressing the shift enter in Jupyter Notebook, and now we check what this function does. Well, this function computes power just like built-in power function. Okay, just to remind you again and again the importance of document string, I'm writing this again and again. Let's run this function. My power, let's say 3 raised to the power 4. I want this. So the result is 81. Oh my god. So whenever, by the way, if you don't have POW function with you, although you have, you can create your function, and whenever you want to use, you can use your function. Not a big deal. Yeah. By the way, what if you you can define a function with more than 2 arguments. Define, let's say, display types. Let's say that's your function, display types, and all you know is or check arguments. Let's say check args. Let's say that's your function, and A, B, C, D, let's say E, these are the input arguments. And let's say at some task you want to know whether all the 5 variables that you're working in somewhere, whether all of them are numeric values or not. If they're not numeric values, you're not moving on and you are doing something because you were let's say you're taking input from somewhere, reading from a file or whatever, and you need to check before moving on whether A, B, C, D, and E, whether they are ints or floats. Otherwise, if any of them is int or float, then you're not processing, then you're not moving on, and you're going to check the input arguments again and so on. These kind of functions are there because whenever you call certain whenever you want to do processing on data, sometimes it is required to check the type of the data, whether the data is supplied in a way that you were expecting and so on. So let's have this function check args. I'm not writing document string here. I guess I've told you enough to write document string again and again. So let's say if is instance a, if is instance int float, if that is true, and is in, let's just have 3 variables just to focus on. If is instance A, then B, and is instance C, if all of them are integers or floats, then do something. Then let's say print A plus B plus C maybe, or A plus B plus C raised to the power 2. Just print their square, let's say. Else, or if they are all integers or floats, then do some interesting task here, some task. Otherwise, you can say, okay, print error. The input arguments are not of the expected types. Fine, you have this function. Let's call this function. The function was check args, so let's check args. Check args, let's say 3, 4, 5. So now you have, all of them are great. Let's say you have check args, and you call this check args on, let's say 3, 4, but this 5 is a string, let's say G. Now you'll be having an error. The input arguments are not of the expected types. One of them or more of them or whatever. Yeah. One more thing. This function is expecting 3 arguments. If you call this function by less than 3 or more than 3 arguments, you'll be getting an error. For example, 3, 4. Although this function is accepting 3 arguments, you're calling it with just 2, you're getting an error because you have not specified all the arguments that the function is requiring. Although the arguments that you have supplied, they are of the type that it is expecting, but you have not supplied the number of arguments that the function is expecting. Similarly, if you call this function by more than 3 arguments, although it requires 3 arguments, you again will get an error because it is expecting 3 arguments and you have not supplied 3 arguments. Later on, later on we will see how to write a function that accepts variable number of arguments. We will see that, but right now in this particular way, if you write the function and if you define the function in this particular way, you have to define the arguments, the number of whatever the number of arguments it is expecting, you have to supply exactly as many, otherwise you are getting an error. Okay, so that's about the multiple arguments. Okay, what next? Well, next time in the next video we will see that what is the importance of order of these input arguments. What will happen if I just swap message 2 and message 1? Will that change the behavior, or is there any order? The first variable, the second variable, third variable, is there any ordering inside the input arguments? Yeah, there is. So let's see in the next video.